Hi everyone. So to close out March, we have got a big week. The week of the 24th of March is big, astrologically speaking. The momentum has been building. We are in eclipse season. Okay, so we're in this eclipse portal. There's been activations, awakenings, illuminations going on all over the place, and we've still got a lot more to come this week. So this week includes a super new moon in Aries with an eclipse. Okay, so further illuminations from that. We've also got Neptune making his ingress into the sign of Aries, and that's going to bring a big shift, and I'll come on to that when I show you the chart. But we've also got a couple of other planets who are currently in retrograde, and they will be retrograding back into the sign of Pisces. They're currently in Aries, and that's Venus and Mercury. So we've got this crossover point at the moment at the cusp of Pisces and Aries, where there's a lot going on. Particularly the planets that I've just mentioned, Venus, Mercury, and Neptune, they're going to cross over, okay, one another. They're going to sort of like have a little dance, and then they're going to go their separate ways. And there is something about this cusp point that I've mentioned in other astrology reports, where we close out a cycle, Pisces, we start a new one, Aries. Okay, so that's the same with any sign. We're closing out a sign, we're moving into another sign. But there is something more profound about this because, of course, Pisces into Aries is the end of an astrological year, that cycle, into a new astrological year. So this is all happening at that particular cusp point. So I've mentioned this previously, but there is major emphasis here on endings and beginnings. And because a couple of those planets are going to be retrograding back into Pisces, it's almost a further opportunity during the period of introspection that a retrograde offers in order to close things out that's needed to then move forward again. So because we are detaching from cycles at the moment, and there is definitely emphasis on this because of what the astrology has been showing us for a while, we're needing to detach from cycles that are not serving us, that do not align with our new reality, that which we're wanting to create for ourselves. And we're getting these sort of little glimpses within the astrology of where we might need to focus on, of course. And I'll come on to this in more detail when I pull up the charts for each of these events. But this momentum has been building, and with this particular week ahead being very sort of like, compounded with all this energy, if you like, there is major emphasis on what we're trying to manifest and set our intentions for going forward with this super new moon. But also the fact that we're aware of all of these endings going on at the same time. And whilst we're doing that and we're closing out cycles and moving into the new, there is a sense of needing to have a bit of a leap of faith, but also needing to still close out the cycles in a proper way, because we're trying to close out karma, we're trying to heal from certain things as we evolve. So this is why I feel that, you know, certainly in the case of Venus and Mercury, starting their retrograde in Aries and then moving back into Pisces is almost giving that further opportunity to check in with our intuition, that Piscean energy, before then propelling us forward. So there's a lot going on around that. Now, with Neptune moving from his home of Pisces into Aries, this is about sort of moving from that hidden aspect of the 12th house energy that Pisces brings and Neptune brings, the hidden aspects suddenly being seen, suddenly being out there. And this is why I've predicted previously about major spiritual awakenings, the veil lifting. It already is lifting and has been lifting for a while, if you're resonating with that and if you're awake to it. But this is where it's going to be more in your face. So this is all happening when we've got the eclipse going on as well. And of course, you know, these retrograde movements that are hovering over the beginning and the end of cycles. So it's big energy. And, you know, Neptune moving into Aries, okay, he will, when he retrogrades back in the summer, retrogrades back into Pisces, that's also going to be another point for him to kind of go home for a little bit, Pisces, before then moving back into Aries. There are so many movements going on with the planets in terms of moving into new signs and then retrograding back. The same is going to be happening for Uranus later in the year and Saturn. So Saturn in Pisces at the moment, trying to get us in alignment with our spiritual truth. He is going to be, at the end of May, he's going to be moving into Aries as well. And then, of course, when he retrogrades, he's going to retrograde back into Pisces, and he won't be fully into Aries until February 2026, okay? But when he moves into Aries, he's going to give Pisces a bit of a rest, and he's going to give Aries a glimpse of what's to come in terms of lessons. So all of this period that Pisces has had to go through with Saturn testing left, right, and center lessons, Aries is going to experience the same. And they might get a glimpse of what's been going on. Okay. Collectively, though, because at the moment, Saturn in Pisces, it doesn't matter if you're Pisces or not. This is about getting us in alignment with spiritual truth. So when he moves into Aries on a collective level, that's all about testing the self, okay? And definitely that warrior spirit, that sovereignty that we are really being called to, you know, take charge of at the moment. So if you like, what's going on is all of this foreshadowing of what's to come. So if we're closing out cycles and we're stepping into being a leader of our own life, then surely when Saturn moves into Aries, it's going to be a bit of a breeze for us. Or so you think, because obviously there's going to be other stuff going on. And it's very unique to us as individuals, depending on our chart. But that's just to give you an insight. We've got, you know, 3 big planets ingressing into different signs, and then they will be retrograding back into where they currently are for a period of time. So endings, beginnings, endings, beginnings. There's a lot of this planetary hovering over the cusp points between signs. So there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on, people. So I hope you've got your, you know, seatbelt on for this. It's definitely been a whirlwind of events. And again, you know, you might not be resonating at all with any of this, but you might be resonating with it. So take what resonates and leave what doesn't, as always. And remember, these reports give us insights into the planetary energy, the potentiality of the energy, but we have got free will in this reality. Okay, so we can choose to align with it. We don't have to. Nobody's forcing us to. Okay, it's important to bear that in mind. Now, let's go into the first chart, okay? I'll try and keep it as brief as I can, but I allow things to flow as they need to because certain messages need to come through. Of course, I use the astrology chart, the data that's presented, and I provide my intuitive interpretations as well as receiving any channeled guidance that is really there to inspire and empower you moving forward, okay? So let's start with the first one. This is Venus, okay? Venus, currently in Aries in retrograde, but on the 27th of March, okay, for us in the UK, it's going to be 8:41 a.m. Apply your own time zones as appropriate. But Venus will retrograde back into the sign of Pisces, and as you can see there, will then be exactly conjunct Neptune. Okay, that's in terms of degrees. I say exactly conjunct because of the degrees, but when Mercury retrogrades back, it will be exact because the degrees and the minutes are the same. But you can see there, Neptune's getting closer. It's 52 minutes there. But this is the moment where Venus actually retrogrades back. Okay, so they do form this conjunction. And so there is that, you know, diving back into the ethereal essence, diving back into the intuition. And of course, with Venus, our Venus values, and certainly from that heart space, the joy we want to experience, the love we want to experience, the money we're trying to attract into our lives, you know, those values as well that we uphold from a heart space, and understanding that whilst in Aries, it might not be the best place for Venus to be, but it offers this dominant energy of standing up for yourself because of your values. And now, during the retrograde, moving back into Pisces, it's sort of, once again checking in with intuition and also the closeout of a cycle to understand if there's still more to learn here intuitively about what is driving us from a values perspective. And also, how we want to experience love, how we want to experience joy, and all of those things. What's in alignment for us? Is it bringing us that joy back to us in return? Okay, where we're wanting to invest our Venus energy. So our time, our attention, our love, our money, and what our intuition is telling us. And there is a deep dive into our intuition because of that conjunction with Neptune. And as we know, because I've just said, Neptune is getting ready to move into Aries. So he is closing out a cycle in Pisces, but he's also at home in Pisces. So can offer Venus that support. And they're going to obviously cross paths because Venus is going to move back. Neptune is moving forward to then get into Aries. Okay, so this is the first dance that's happening between these planets. And okay, the North Node is close and Saturn's also close. So there is still that close energy when it relates to our purpose and our path forward, as well as the lessons that we're learning from Saturn. Alongside all of this, okay, we're wanting to get in alignment with our spiritual truth and understanding from an intuitive perspective that where we're trying to invest our time, our love, our attention, our money, and so on, is it still in alignment with our spiritual truth as it is now? Because as we evolve, okay, that can change. So we need to just take that time to reflect. And that is what a retrograde offers us. It's introspection in terms of that. But certainly from a divine feminine perspective, and remember we have feminine and masculine essence within us, regardless of gender or how we identify, because, we've got the nurturing side that wants to create, the feminine, and we've got that drive to take action and have the courage from the masculine side. And ideally, we want it balanced, but it can kind of pivot and flex depending on circumstances, of course, and what's going on. So here, we're wanting to understand as well, what is it we're trying to create in our lives from that place of the self, of the Aries energy, and now moving back into Pisces. What is our intuition guiding us forward towards? Have we needed to check back in with our intuition, meditate on the situation to really understand, and knowing that we've got this new moon coming up with the eclipse, preparing ourselves for further illumination, of course, but also understanding that the power with the new moon is when it relates to the self. So if we're going to be focusing on the self, because we're in Aries season, then of course we need to be coming at this from a place of the self and what is valuable to us. Okay, so that might be what we're being shown. And the moon is in Pisces at this point as well. So that is a sensitive place for the moon to be. So there can be sensitivities around all of this and understanding certain things that need to close out from a Venus values perspective, and knowing what's coming with then Mercury going to be moving back a few days later. There's lots to do with kind of our expression, communication, and also our thoughts. So there's a big link to it's the bigger picture, as I keep saying, with astrology. Okay. Now, in terms of aspects, I've marked up on here, as you'll see. So there is a trine, which is harmonious in astrology, to Juno in Sagittarius. There is a sesqui square to Poseidon and Vesta in Scorpio. Okay, and there is opposition to the South Node in Virgo. There is also a Yod, which I'll come on to in a moment. But with the trine, that's harmonious. So this is about the commitment to our journey, because Juno, it relates to love and commitment. And Sag is all about the quest, discovery, what we're learning, the journey. And it can be very motivational energy as well. So in terms of, Venus, then checking back in with intuition and understanding, okay, this is what my path actually is moving forward, and I'm committed to it because I've discovered X, Y, and Z. I understand from my intuition that I do need to close out these particular cycles, and I am committed to my path forward in order to clear the way for the path forward. Okay, that's why we need to detach from cycles to free up space for new ones. And the opposition to the South Node is also that push-pull type energy, because the past might be dragging us back. We might be having to revisit the past, and that's not uncommon in a retrograde, because we do reflect and we are revisiting things. So that's not a bad thing, but it's just saying that the past might be kind of like tugging at us, because that is what we've always known and that is what is comfortable. But the trine here is the commitment to our journey, and that is what needs to drive us forward to enable us to feel empowered and motivated in order to close out the cycles we need to. The Sesky square with Vesta and Poseidon, well, you know, Poseidon churning things up from the depths for us to see, and it can be linked to our sacred flame energy, particularly with what we're trying to create with Vesta as well, but coming from a deep place and understanding maybe we've neglected that side of ourselves before, or, you know, we've wanted to pursue something in the past and we haven't, but now we're having to focus on the self. That can feel a little bit uncomfortable because we're putting ourselves first. But remember, it is the commitment to our quest and the detachment from the cycles that we need to detach from. Okay, we can use the South Node in Virgo as a springboard. We can say, okay, we want to get things in order. We want to clean things up. But we need to also understand that there needs to be less expectation of outcome and more of a surrender to it as well. Okay, the Yod, the finger of God in this chart, is pointing towards Lilith in Libra. She's retrograde at this point. Okay, and at the base we've got the North Node in Pisces, and we have got Uranus in Taurus. So here, you know, the finger of God is pointing our attention to the shadow aspects. Lilith is the shadow feminine, and she is also a great teacher because she is going to reveal to us shadow aspects that maybe we don't want to see. And in Libra, this relates to fairness, reciprocity, balance, harmony. And of course, we want situations to be balanced. But if that means closing out a cycle, oosh, there might be some shadow aspects coming up. There also might be some acknowledgement of those deep desires within from a feminine perspective, because remember, this is during Venus retrograding back into Pisces as well. So there's feminine energy there of what we're trying to create, because we want to establish fairness, and there needs to be acceptance of our path forward, North Node at the base, okay, and how our intuition is guiding us forward because of the Piscean energy. We're relying on our inner compass to guide us forward. So understanding that fairness and balance needs to come from trusting our intuition, and also enabling change, facilitating change in our physical reality, Uranus in Taurus, by doing something new, perhaps, which again can be a step out of the comfort zone. But we can only really do that if we're closing out the old. So that's why, okay, it's a bigger picture with all of this, but attention is needed on shadow aspects coming up to be accepted, acknowledged, healed, and also the desires we have within us for justice, for fairness, because we might have overlooked that. Again, if we've not been following our sacred flame and we're suddenly having to put ourselves in the spotlight of saying, okay, what do I want? Because maybe, you know, you've done things for other people, and it's like, that's fine. But when you're then asked, what do you want? Can you answer it? So it's going within and understanding, okay, I might have neglected pursuing that sacred flame energy, and therefore it is out of balance, and I need to accept that there's shadow aspects around that because maybe I've not believed I could pursue what I wanted to for whatever reason, okay? But the North Node in Pisces is calling us forward, guided by the inner compass and our intuition. And that's where Venus now is immersed in that energy of Pisces, conjunct Neptune, okay? So wanting to be almost in that fantasy realm of dreaming the dream into reality, because Uranus in Taurus is all about that new reality in a physical, grounded way. But we also want to feel secure as part of that as well. So that's why, there might be shadow aspects coming up as well to take a look at. So in a nutshell, that is Venus is retrograde back into Pisces at that particular moment. It's a freeze frame of the cosmos at that time, of course. Now, the other chart associated with this is what I've just shown you, but alongside the UK. Okay, so we've got the UK's natal chart in the middle, and then we've got what I've just shown you on the outer wheel. And this will show you how the energies are playing out for the house system perspective. And you can do the same with your natal chart. Okay, so Venus will retrograde back into Pisces in the 9th house for the UK. Okay, so it is about the quest. It is about what the intuition is telling us and what we're learning and discovering from that. Okay, the yod that I've just mentioned connects the 9th house, the 11th house, and the 4th house. So there is something about, the foundations that we want to establish fairness at the foundations of a situation. But we need to look at change in our connections with others within our physical reality. And also, when it comes to our connections, how secure we sort of feel in them, okay, from that grounded perspective. Because the North Node is going to be giving us insights from our intuition to move forward on the path. So we need to be aware of what's going on in our connections with others as well in relation to this particular yod, okay? And the focus needs to be on the fairness, and Lilith showing us what needs to be balanced and harmonious to propel us forward. Okay, so that's all going on there in the 9th house. Now, let's have a look at another chart, because as I said, it's going to be a big week. So 2 days after Venus retrogrades back into Pisces, we have got the super new moon eclipse in Aries. That's happening on the 29th of March, and for us in the UK, 10:57 a.m. Okay. And you'll see the yellow arrow pointing to the moon, and for a new moon, you have the sun and the moon conjunct exactly. What's interesting about this is that they are at 9 degrees. And why do you say that, Kirsty? Well, because 9 is all about releasing and preparing to detach from cycles. So the theme is there. Now, you'll notice alongside the sun and the moon, Mercury is at 0 degrees of Aries, because shortly after this new moon, he is going to move into Pisces. And you can also see Neptune at 29 degrees still, final anaretic degree. And he is now 57 minutes. So obviously he's getting closer. Okay. So Venus has already passed by, because Venus is now 28. Okay. Because she's gone back and Neptune's moving forward. So there is still this heightened energy between all of these because they're so close to one another. Okay, so we've still got that essence of the Piscean Aries changeover. And as we move from that intuitive insights that we've gleaned into our sovereignty and acting on what we have learned from our intuition and where our inner compass is guiding us, basically. So for a new moon, that's all about working with the lunar energy to set intentions for this lunar cycle and to manifest what it is that we're trying to achieve okay? And in Aries, that is all about the self. So it's what we want. It's not what other people want for us or what we think we should want. This is about what we actually want. And it needs to come from a place of sovereignty. So bearing in mind, Chiron is there, has been there for a time. Collectively, the healing journey is around our sovereignty and stepping into that leadership role, taking ownership of our lives and moving forward with that cardinal energy of Aries to get things done. Now, we'll point out at this time, Mars is in Cancer, as I've said in other reports as well, and he still has to go through the sign of Cancer for the duration of Aries season. He will ingress into Leo the day before Taurus season. And that will activate a lot of that masculine drive and action, the courage and to be seen and recognized. Okay. But this is all preparatory. All of this is preparatory. So whilst we might not be able to take full action, this is about getting us ready to take action based on what we want in our life, in our reality. And Mercury there at the 0 degrees of Aries at this particular point of the new moon with the eclipse is that emphasis on, okay, we've got to get our thoughts in check here with what we want. And we need to speak up in terms of what we want. Okay. So there is confidence building here. There is authority building and empowerment as well, it feels. Okay, but this is still being guided from the intuition because of the heavy Piscean energy and the Aries energy that's being activated, as well as the closeout of cycles and beginning new ones. So here we have a semi-square from the sun and the moon across to Uranus in Taurus. Okay, so obviously in the previous chart with Venus retrograding back into Pisces, Uranus was part of the yard with the North Node. So there was emphasis there as well. But this is indicating a bit of a challenge when it comes to certainly the changes in our reality. And do we feel, with the moon there in Aries, as a sovereign being, do we feel secure in what we're trying to create for ourselves? Is it stable for us? Does it bring us that security in our physical reality? You know, because if we're wanting to take a leap of faith, we're wanting to make change, but we've not done this before, it's completely new. And that can be the Uranus energy as well, that innovative stride forward. Do we feel secure about doing that? Often taking a leap of faith is very scary for some people. So do we feel like we're in our sovereignty? And so the question is being posed here because as we're trying to sort of manifest and set intentions to move forward with what we want, okay, this is a reality that I want, and this is what I want to create for myself. And my intuition has been telling me this, but it involves a leap of faith to do this. And do I feel secure enough to do that? It's challenging that. But what I will say is that there is a harmonious trine to the South Node in Virgo and a harmonious sextile to Mars. Now, I've just mentioned about Mars not really liking the fact that he is in the sign of Cancer because he's got a field of feelings and there is stuff coming up that needs to be processed. And that's why it is that preparatory phase that I spoke about, getting ready for when he moves into Leo and can show himself for that authentic soul expression. So the change that we're wanting to experience in our reality, yes, we might feel a bit, is it going to be secure for me to do this? But actually, by detaching from old cycles, that is going to allow for the change. It is going to allow for security. Because holding on to stuff that doesn't serve us is also not very secure. Okay, from a soul perspective and from a wider perspective as well. But you know, Mars is there having to still process things and is understanding the change that is needed. And this is why this is all needing to be processed before full action can be taken. So it almost feels like a bit of hesitation around actually, you know, taking a leap, because first of all, the focus is needed on, you know, processing what needs to be detached from, and also what action needs to be taken when the retrogrades are pretty much done and when Mars moves into Leo. Okay. So as I say, it's the preparatory phase. Now, interestingly as well, we have got direct opposition between Chiron in Aries and Lilith in Libra, both at 22. So powerful master numbers, angel numbers, 22, 22, okay? And cardinal energy face-off, this is Aries and Libra. But this push-pull is, again, the balance that we want to experience and challenging our sovereignty. Are we bold enough to put this in place, to create what we want, to manifest what we want, to pursue what we want in order to bring about balance? Are we bold enough to do that? Are we confident enough to do that? So we're looking at that as well. Now, interestingly, past Fortuna, the pot of fortune, is there close to Mars, okay, at 20 degrees Cancer at that particular point. And the vertex point, which can symbolize fate and destiny, is there at 5 degrees of Sag at this particular point. So when it comes to, you know, a destined moment for us, it relates to the quest, Sag. And the trine, okay, that is from Juno going up to, there's quite a lot of energy here, okay, certainly Neptune, Venus, and the North Node. It's still that commitment to the path. It's commitment to the quest, and it's commitment to our inner compass guiding the way. And that's where the destiny comes into it. Success comes from feeling the things that need to be felt, to process what needs to be felt, because we're understanding more about why we're wanting to make certain changes. But we have to feel these things to understand where a change is required. Okay. And that's again why Mars, you know, is in this sextile to Uranus, because it's by feeling these things where we want to take action, or where perhaps our masculine drive of courage and taking action has been challenged, because perhaps we've not stepped into that leadership role previously, taking charge of our own life, letting others decide things for us. And we need to understand this is down to us now to create the change. It's about commitment to the quest, and it's about processing what's coming up that's showing us where we need to detach from cycles, situations, people, whatever it might be, negative thought patterns, okay? However it resonates, if at all. So that's going to guide us forward in terms of the new moon and setting those intentions with that commitment to the path, okay? Now, with the new moon, it's got this eclipse that's coming with it, okay? So further illumination could come up, which for a full moon, you know, we get that illumination. The last one we had was with an eclipse, so it was like double illumination. And now we've got this other eclipse coming up, okay? And it's cardinal energy, so it could show us, not only show us aspects around the self, because it's Aries energy and we need to be aware of what we need to be aware of for our own journey. And that's going to show us, of course, where change is needed, where we need to detach, and so on. But it's also potentially going to show us where that has been challenged in the past, and where we might have needed to step up and show up for ourselves in the past. But again, during the periods of introspection that the retrogrades around all of this is giving us, it's to enable us to go within, to understand. It's just that there's a lot going on energetically. So we might feel these things and not really understand why we're feeling them. But it's kind of, you know, if we're being shown from our higher self through our intuition that something is not right for us anymore, we need to listen to that, and we need to understand why that's coming up in order for us to move onto that aligned path forward. So our intention settings is about aligning with our path, okay, with that Aries energy, but also with the North Node Pisces. So again, it's closing out certain things to begin new, but being guided by our inner compass, our intuition, to guide us forward on the quest of the self and the sovereignty that we are worthy of upholding. Okay. Fabulous. Now, I did write down this is happening for the UK. This super new moon eclipse in Aries is happening in the 10th house. So that relates to inner authority and also work. So it could illuminate things around work situations and could relate to particularly, you know, leadership roles in work, because it's Aries energy, which is leadership. But ultimately, Aries is about being the leader of your own life, you know, but there could be corresponding leadership scenarios in work situations that this sort of resonates with. And it could be about, you know, taking a leap forward into a leadership role and maybe not kind of, you know, feeling so courageous about it because it's a leap of faith. So it could be something like that. But also in terms of our inner authority, we need to trust that we've got that authority within us to actually, you know, deserve the path that we're trying to walk on, and that which we're trying to create, the reality that we're trying to create for us, that inner authority and having boundaries in place to protect that is all part of this intention setting and manifestation for the super new moon. Okay, right. Third chart. So this one is Mercury. Yeah, you've probably noticed Mercury's in retrograde. You've probably experienced Mercury in retrograde. I know the day before he stationed retrograde in Aries, technology was going up the spout. It was just, yeah, there was a lot going on with Mercury the day before. That's all I will say. And then we've had recent things, certainly in the UK, haven't we, with yeah, certain things happening. And it's definitely a retrograde. And I laugh, and I don't mean to disrespect it, because I still feel that it's a retrograde. It's a valuable period of introspection, but it does tend to play havoc with technology, communication, and can affect travel as well. Okay, and we have seen some of that going on, certainly in the UK. So with this particular chart, this is a freeze frame of the cosmos at the time that Mercury retrogrades back into Pisces. Okay, so here you go. This is the exact conjunction between Mercury and Neptune. So Venus, this is very interesting because Venus is 2828. So that number might mean something for somebody. But they've already done their dance. They're still close by, but you know, they've already kind of crossed paths, haven't they? Well, now it's time for Mercury and Neptune. But Neptune is almost in Aries at this point. So this is the big one, I feel. Now, 9 hours and 40 minutes, because Neptune moves fairly slow, but 9 hours, 40 minutes after this particular moment, Neptune will be in Aries. So this is happening on the 30th of March, okay? And certainly for the UK, okay, so Mercury retrogrades back. I should have shown you that first of all, apologies. 30th of March, 3:18 a.m. So for other people in the world, it's going to happen on the 29th, but there's still going to be 9 hours, 40 minutes difference between these planetary movements, okay? But we've got, for the UK, it's all happening on the 30th. So they are exactly conjunct. They are on top of one another, metaphorically speaking here. So this is about, you know, Mercury retrograde. I've already just mentioned about Mercury retrograde, but the introspection that comes from a Mercury retrograde relates to communication and thoughts. Because of this cusp point that I keep talking about with Aries and Pisces. In Aries, okay, the retrograde is about saying, where do I need to speak up for myself? Where do I need to express myself from a sovereign place? You know, I've got to stand up for myself here and say something. So it's introspection on where that needs to happen. Now, going back into Pisces, this is about connecting in with the intuition well and truly, okay? Because this is about the Piscean essence when we think of communication is from our intuition. That is source energy running through us. That's our higher self speaking to us. So we connect in with our intuition. Now, we already know we've got all of this energy in Pisces. Ceres, this is about planting seeds. Okay, planting seeds. That felt like a mic drop moment. Sorry, very dramatic. I am a Pisces, very dramatic. Planting seeds for the reality that we want to experience. Now, this is in an ethereal capacity because it is about planting seeds that are in alignment with what our intuition is guiding us towards. Because the North Node is in Pisces, we are moving in that direction of the spiritual path. And as I've said before, if you don't associate yourself with spirituality, this is about simply connecting with your soul, connecting with your intuition and what your intuition is telling you to guide you forward, okay, with surrender and flow. Saturn is there teaching us lessons, getting us in alignment with our spiritual truth, having to get us to put boundaries in place and to set rules for ourselves that maybe we feel uncomfortable doing because Pisces doesn't like doing that. Okay. So this is about bringing structure from Saturn's perspective, bringing structure to a sign that is a very flowy sign. Okay. Venus is now there, checking in with the intuition when it comes to the values, as I mentioned in the first chart. Okay. And Neptune is closing out the cycle at home. He's just about to leave home and put the key in the lock and say, I'll see you in a few months' time when I'm back from my retrograde. But now I'm just meeting up with Mercury, and yet the thoughts are going to be now almost overwhelmingly intuitive. That's how it feels. Okay, that's how it feels to me, intuitively speaking. Because it's about, you know, our thoughts. We're connecting in with that ethereal essence, and this is an exact conjunction. But also, it might not be pretty, it might not be easy, because 29 degrees is the final anaretic degree that a planet or planetary body can be in before it moves signs. And we're at the final minute here as well. So this is about going over old ground. This is endings. And then Neptune's going to part ways and go, see ya, I'm off into Aries. So do you know what I mean? It's like it's big because there is movement and there is shifts going on all over the place. And we're going back over old ground to revisit stuff. Again, valuable in a retrograde because it's about introspection. But this is going to bring things out in the open. This is going to just, you know, there could be actually sudden clarity, okay, from intuition, but sudden clarity of my intuition's been telling me that all along. And, you know, remember, we've got this closeout point, and I know I keep emphasizing it, but it just feels so pivotal because we are getting to the end of a cycle. We're getting to the end of an astrological cycle. And we're already in Aries. We're already in Aries season. So at the moment, we're just having to go back and revisit things in terms of what our intuition might have been telling us before and might have missed. So we're looking at all of that. So our thoughts and also our communication. How are we communicating with ourselves in terms of that intuitive dialogue that we're having with our higher self? And understanding also, I have to point this out because it's just come to me from spirit, thank you, that Neptune rules the media. So with Mercury, when it comes to technology, that's one thing, but obviously in retrograde, there is this introspection, and Mercury, I will just say it because I'm being guided to say it. Mercury can be a trickster. Okay. So when you have got this energy together, when it relates to trickster energy and the media, what do you think I'm trying to say? So you have to use your discernment with anything and everything that you see and hear. And if it's not coming from an intuitive place within you that agrees with it, take it at face value. Okay. And I was guided to say that. So I'm putting that out there. Some people might get triggered with that, but I don't care, because this is about understanding that these things are happening and have been happening for a while. Here at this point, 2929, like directly on top of one another, and you've got a planet that rules the media and a planet that can emanate trickster energy during a retrograde just before Neptune moves into Aries. Okay, be mindful of that. And then Neptune, of course, is going to then move into Aries, and the veil could be lifted on a lot of things. And I've said that before in other astrology reports. The veil has already been lifting, but it could lift a lot. Okay. And there's a lot of things in plain sight anyway. So just bear that in mind. But from an individual perspective, you know, this is about trusting your intuition and what you're feeling intuitively when it comes to communication and expression, connecting in with that ethereal essence, okay, in order to understand where you need to speak up. So when Mercury eventually stations direct, which is on the 7th of April, we have got another 2 weeks of this. He's then going to obviously move back into Aries, and that's going to enable that empowered speaking up for oneself. Okay. So again, retrogrades, introspection, it's valuable. We're revisiting things. Okay. But just watch out for that trickster media energy. Okay. Right. Yes, I did feel guided to say that. So it's obviously important. Now, the moon will still be in Aries at this point, of course, having recently had the super new moon with the eclipse. And so there is still feelings of, you know, that kind of self-driven, needed to put the self first, those kind of feelings, okay, if we can align with it. And how we're feeling about everything that's coming to the surface to be seen. We've got past Fortuna at this point is 29 degrees, also the anaretic degree of Sag. So also fire energy, you know, we're in Aries season, that is fire energy. And success comes from the quest. And success comes from closing out cycles, 29 degrees, before we move on to new ones. So there's still this emphasis about the commitment to the path, commitment to the quest, because we've also got Juno in trine to Mercury and Neptune, okay, as is Mars. So that's really interesting, because we're still feeling these things that we're needing to feel. And in this situation, you know, certainly between Mars and Mercury with Neptune, the cardinal energy is Cancer. Okay, so driven from those feelings and what's coming up that need to be processed in terms of action that needs to be taken and so on. It comes from processing and understanding what those are. And that then enables the guidance forward. But it is also the commitment to the path that's enabling those things to be seen, either through intuition or through the veil lifting. Okay. There is also a yod in this chart and the Yod, finger of God, is pointing towards Vesta. Okay. And at the base, we have got Jupiter and we have got the moon. So the focus here is on the sacred flame energy. And so when it comes to, you know, Mercury retrograding back and us really connecting in with our intuition and our higher self, it's understanding from the depth of our soul what our sacred flame actually is, what our sacred flame means to us, and how we feel about it, how we feel about pursuing it because of the moon being at the base of the Yod. And also, are we hopeful about it? Do we need to look at something from different perspective in order to pursue it, to allow for that expansion that Jupiter can bring? But Jupiter in Gemini, not a comfortable place for Jupiter, but there is still expansion here and hope if we can look at something from a different perspective, a higher perspective, or looking at, you know, two different options, whatever it might be, to pursue what we want to pursue. But the focus needs to be on the sacred flame, which could be hidden. We might have hidden it from ourselves, and now it's coming to light because the veil has lifted, is lifting, and we are understanding what we want to pursue. And why should anybody else tell us what we can and can't pursue? So we need to feel bold and empowered to move in the direction of the sacred flame energy to allow for that expansion and growth to come forth. Okay. And that one, Mercury, ninth house. So for the UK, ninth house is predominant with this. The only thing that was the 10th house, I think, was the super new moon. Yeah, but everything else going on, the main house is the ninth. So definitely the quest, learning, what are we discovering during this time? And that's great because retrogrades, introspection, we want to learn things because we're trying to understand what it is we need to do or why certain things have happened in a certain way. Okay, but bearing in mind what I mentioned before about trickster energy as well, and also that you know, we've got Mercury retrograde for another couple of weeks after this point, and then we have post shadow phase. So by the time Mars does ingress into Leo, which is on the 18th of April, we will be out of that shadow phase as well. I can hear that bike, if you could hear it going past. That was somebody revving their engine, ready to go. Somebody really getting ready for Mars moving into Leo. Yeah. And actually, I've looked ahead at the astrology for that, and it is positive. We've just got to get through these retrogrades, these eclipses, you know, the planetary move of Neptune, and you know, the shadow phases that are associated with it. But it's all to help us. It's to serve a purpose, because without this introspection and also the illumination of certain things, how do we know what needs to change? If we don't feel that something isn't working for us, how do we know that we need to change it? So it's all for our highest good. Okay. Now, the final chart I am going to show you is Neptune. Neptune's ingress into Aries. So I have mentioned, as my throat chakra goes, I have mentioned about this being extremely pivotal because of the fact that he's moving from his home sign of Pisces into Aries. So the hidden becomes seen. The hidden becomes seen. And yes, he will retrograde back, and that's happening in July. Okay. He will retrograde, and then in October, so he'll have a 5-month retrograde. So partly through his retrograde, he'll then move back into Pisces. So he'll go home for a little bit, and then he'll move back into Aries. And as I mentioned before, Saturn and Uranus are also going to make big moves as well this year. The Neptune is an outer planet, and that's why the association with Pisces, the ethereal, the mystical, it's the subconscious, Okay, it's hidden aspects. And he is at home in Pisces. But now he's had to close that cycle and is moving into Aries and being seen. Okay, it's kind of like, right, this is the hidden, and now there is focus on the self, but this is about understanding that the veil has lifted big style. And I predicted that in previous astrology reports, the veil lifting, potentially even glitches in the matrix associated with that, because the veil is lifting. So what's hidden is being seen. And it's about carrying forward that intuitive essence of Neptune into a sign of sovereignty. So it's sort of like soul sovereignty coming to the forefront of the reality. And this is why I've also said about, major spiritual awakenings even more, because if things that have been hidden are now seen on a big scale, mass awakenings. And therefore, it's encouraging us to step into that sovereignty and to own who we are. Because at the end of the day, that is who we can rely on our journey, isn't it? So if we're committed to the path, committed to the quest, then if we have that relationship with ourselves where we're understanding what we want to pursue, and cycles we need to close out, it's all our responsibility. So we're taking ownership. And because of what we're being shown, okay, and what Neptune is revealing to us, it's enabling us to step more into that sovereignty, because he is now heightening the energy of sovereignty and the self, the warrior self. Okay. So this is happening on the 30th of March. And for us in the UK, 12:58. So it's 9 hours and 40 minutes after Mercury retrogrades back into Pisces. Okay, so at this point, obviously they've done their little dance of that exact conjunction, and they're still close, but now he's in a different sign. Okay, so he's now sharing Aries with the Sun, Chiron, and the Moon is still there, but at the end, because obviously this is all happening within a short space of time, which is why it's such a big week. And in terms of the aspects with Neptune, the only thing is this semi-square to Uranus. So that semi-square is still there, which is saying about, do we feel secure enough about this going forward to create change in our reality? Because maybe what we've been shown through this veil lifting or sudden awakenings can kind of feel like it throws us off kilter, but it's not meant to, okay? But again, it's that whole leap of faith, isn't it? And it's sort of like, okay, so now from an intuitive perspective, that Neptunian energy, I have got to trust myself, Aries energy, to create the change that I want in my physical reality. But okay, maybe I don't feel that secure about it. It's a challenging energy. This is not saying you are secure or you're not secure. It's the energy, and it's indicating a minor challenge. So the cardinal energy in this is obviously Aries. So it's leading from a place of sovereignty and belief in oneself. That's what needs to come forth. And this is just the moment that Neptune ingresses into Aries. Okay. So you could say it's like foreshadowing this period of time that's coming up before he retrogrades back into Pisces. But we know that the astrology changes day by day. So there's different aspects and different things because it's the bigger picture. Okay. But this is just an indication of that moment when he moves into Aries and is supporting the soul essence of sovereignty, is supporting the emotional home of sovereignty, and also the healing journey, because we're healing our sovereignty. But by believing in ourselves from our intuition, that we are bold enough to make the choices that we want for our life. Okay. Now, past fortuna, the pot of fortune, is at this point in Leo. Okay, so success is all about showing up and being seen and recognized for who we are and having the courage to do so. So we are being called to step into a courageous energy. And that's why it might not feel, that stable for us, because it's like, whoa, okay, I've got to really now believe in myself to propel myself forward. I haven't drawn it on here, but there is a grand air trine. Okay, so you might be able to see the triangle in the middle, but we've got Jupiter there in Gemini. Okay, and then there's a line that's going across to Pallas in Aquarius, and then another one down to Lilith in Libra. So that's a grand air trine. There's also still a water trine going on. We know we've got Mars in the mix with Poseidon and Vesta and Saturn. So we're still learning lessons because of what's being churned up. Okay, that's been a consistent theme for quite a while. But this air trine is very interesting because air can be about, communication and truth and clarity coming forth. So again, with the veil lifting and us being shown things that have been hidden, this is going to enable the flow of clarity in that sense with that air energy. The cardinal energy in the mix here is Libra. So it comes from the shadow aspects and those deep desires, or maybe suppressed feelings of certain things when it comes to fairness. But ultimately with Pallas there in Aquarius, fighting for the reality that we want to experience and being strategic enough to put things in place whilst understanding what those desires are for our reality and addressing shadow aspects. And that enables the growth and expansion that we want to experience. But we have to overcome the shadow aspects. And again, those shadow aspects might pertain to our sense of security in our physical reality. Pallas in Aquarius is feminine energy, but it's also warrior energy. So it's almost like, okay, I want to fight for this new reality, Pallas in Aquarius, and innovate and do something completely new. But I've got shadow aspects coming up because if I do that, perhaps it's not going to be as secure as staying in this situation. When actually staying in that situation is something that the South Node in Virgo is telling you need to detach from because it's not serving you. And maybe, Saturn and the North Node are saying, well, I'm trying to teach you here that that's not in alignment with your spiritual truth. So what are you going to do about it? And you might be thinking, well, yeah, I want to create this new reality, but maybe I've just got to look at things from a different perspective or investigate a bit further with Jupiter and Gemini. Okay. But what drives that forward is that desire for fairness and balance and harmony. Because of course we want to experience that in our life, in our reality. Of course we want to experience that. And there's just so much going on with our intuition leading us in that direction from our inner compass. It's our higher self guiding us forward. And big energy in Pisces, okay, to immerse oneself in that ethereal essence and trusting intuition, because we can doubt our intuition very easily. But with Mercury now in Pisces as part of his retrograde, we do need to be mindful about that, okay, where we might have sabotaged our intuitive insights. We need to connect into our intuition, but trust our intuition as part of it because of the North Node in Pisces as well, guiding us forward and remaining in that sovereignty to do that. Okay, from a soul perspective and from an emotional home perspective, to feel bold enough and brave enough to believe in oneself. Okay, because it's all about the self. Now, I felt, and by the way, there's still that opposition with Chiron and Lilith as well. So it's definitely challenging the healing journey of the sovereignty, because we've got to address what's coming up that needs to be processed. Okay. But I remember when I first looked at this chart and I saw, there's only one aspect that Neptune is making in this chart. it kind of feels like a void. It sort of feels like a void to me. And there can be that energy with Neptune because it is very, with the ethereal essence and you know, the Pisces energy associated with it, it can feel like you're going into a bit of a void of the unknown, I suppose. And many people might have gone through the dark night of the soul, and that can feel like a void as well. So it's just understanding that, you know, what's being revealed to us as the veil lifts on a big scale. This is about understanding it's all to enable us to step into our sovereignty. And if there is any feeling of it being a void, it's the unknown, it's the uncertainty that is potentially causing that challenging energy. But if we remain confident in that assertive Aries energy of this is my path and I need to focus on the self, this is being shown to me for a reason. I'm now trying to look at, you know, my intuition guiding me forward, putting boundaries in place where I need to, setting rules for my own life, understanding the Venus values from an intuitive perspective of what works for me and what doesn't. Am I investing my Venus values and my time, my energy, my love, my attention, my money in the wrong places? And how am I talking to myself in terms of my intuition? What am I understanding about where I'm being guided towards? And that belief in oneself to step into that sovereignty and have that commitment to the path going forward. But understanding the retrograde energy generally can feel like a void also. So that might be why that came to me intuitively, because it just feels a bit sparse. Now you'll see there's a lot going on in the middle, but I'm guided to look at certain things. And for me, it was just that, and also past Fortuna. So we need to definitely show up for ourselves. And that comes with courage as well. Okay. So whatever is going to be revealed to us from the eclipse, from the Neptune ingress and the veil lifting, with many awakenings going on and things like that, this is about belief in the self and showing up with courage to your path. Okay. Even wading through the void to get to that point, because we have to understand what isn't working for us in order to find what is working for us. Okay. And there's been a lot going on over the past 6 months, a year, maybe even beyond, where we've been shown certain things. And it just feels like it's all compounding and compacting and coming together. So it can feel intense because it's kind of all at once. You know, Venus retrogrades back into Pisces. And then we've got the super new moon with the eclipse. And then we've got Mercury moving back into Pisces. And then we've got Neptune moving into Aries. So that, again, that crossover point of endings, beginnings, endings, beginnings. It's natural to kind of feel like, what's going on? Am I closing this out? Am I starting this? Am I doing it? You know what I mean? So it's understanding what the intuition is saying about closing out cycles, because we're getting to the end of cycles in order to move into the new. Okay. But lots of planetary shakeups this year for sure. So there you go. I hope that finds you well. And it is going to be a busy week in terms of the astrology, but there is a consistent theme, and that is about utilizing the introspection of the retrogrades to your advantage and understanding that these movements back that Mercury and Venus are doing into Pisces is revisiting old ground, which happens during a retrograde, introspecting on values from a Venus perspective, worth as well when it comes to that investment of the Venus energy and your resources in that way. Your time, very valuable. Your energy, very valuable. Your love, very valuable. Are you investing it in the right places? What is your intuition telling you? Is it in alignment with your soul? and your spiritual integrity. And then with Mercury, okay, connecting with intuition. What is your intuition telling you? What is your higher self telling you at this time about closing out cycles? So understanding that that movement back is a further opportunity to understand what needs to close out, because they're literally going back into the previous astrological cycle. And then crossing paths with Neptune and that activation energy of the veil lifting to show us those insights, but also on a bigger scale as well, because I just feel there is a lot more that's going to be coming up and out for us to see. And what do we do with that? Well, we step into our sovereignty and we have that courage and that boldness to our quest, our path, and what we want. But understanding that if we've not stepped into that leadership role in our own life, it can feel uncomfortable, because it's sort of like, well, I've got to look after me. I've got to do this for me. So used to doing things for other people. What do I actually want? Oh, it's that. Why haven't I pursued it? Because that shadow aspect keeps coming up. So it's all to help us. But because it's all happening during this time, and we've got a super new moon in Aries with Eclipse, it's very powerful energy within a short space of time of one another happening. And the cusp point of the endings and beginnings is pivotal to this. This is major, major cycle closeouts and detachment from situations that are no longer serving us from a soul perspective, from our spiritual integrity's perspective, and recognizing that there might be aspects that have challenged our sovereignty, and we've got to revisit old ground, see what our intuition is telling us in order to detach and then move forward from a sovereign perspective, and believing in oneself to uphold that sovereignty moving forward. Okay, this is about the reality that we're trying to create for ourselves, and to do it from a sovereign perspective, knowing what we want and going for it. Because remember, Aries is cardinal energy. And okay, this might be the preparatory phase before Mars moves into Leo on the 18th of April. But we can still put the groundwork in and have that strategic approach in terms of what we need to do by understanding what we're trying to close out. And everybody's on different timings, you know. There's no desperate rush to these things. If people feel that, it's whatever feels right for you, if it feels right at all. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't, as I always say. But this is about, you might be being shown where you need to close out cycles in order to move forward into a more aligned path that is more akin to you. It's more in alignment with your soul's essence and who you are. And you're not going to be the same person now as who you were a year ago, for example. So naturally, things fall out of alignment. But this is pivotal at this point, because it's a new reality that we're moving into. So we're having to shed these layers. And remember, we are in the year of the snake. It's major death and rebirth. So it's big. And we're shedding these layers, but we can't just almost shed them without realizing why they were there in the first place, because, you know, we're still attached to them in that way. It's understanding what is coming up, why it's coming up, and why we need to detach from certain situations. And that helps us on our healing journey within our sovereignty as well. Okay, but focus on the self. That's the most important thing. Okay, you are the most important person in your life. So it's remembering that. Okay. Sending you love and blessings for all of this planetary activity this week. And of course, I'll be back with further reports soon. Love and blessings, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.